Got a little bit of national news for you, national political stuff. Has to do with Representative Barney Frank. The only thing I like about this guy is he has the word Frank in there, and Barney, which isn't close to Barnes, and there's no point of confusion here, but Barney Frank will not run for re-election, Democrat out of Massachusetts. He has been polluting Congress for 32 years in the House of Representatives. Do we have something on him, Chad?
Around the time of the signing of the financial reform bill,
yeah,
I tentatively decided I was going to make this my last term. I spent a very busy and somewhat stressful 4 years with the financial crisis, first dealing with the crisis and then dealing with the legislation to make it less likely that we would have another one. I then had, as is appropriate, a very spirited campaign for re-election. And my view was that I could do my job best of fighting for the public policies I care about by making this my last term. Ordinarily, I would not have announced as early as I did, but we are doing redistricting, or did redistricting, and the legislative leadership and my colleagues all said, look, it's important for you to tell everybody, all of us, whether you plan to run or not. And so I gave my initial view. And I was planning to run again, and then the congressional redistricting came. And this decision was precipitated by congressional redistricting, not entirely caused by it. I've been ambivalent about running, not because I don't continue to think the job is important, but because there are other things I'd like to do in my life before my career's over. But then the new district came out. There are two aspects of the new district.
Can we shut him up and keep the theme song going?
That makes this...
Can we make Barney Frank stop talking? Okay. There we go. Candle in the wind. The farewell Barney Frank theme song. Oh, it's so true. Your candle burned out long before your legend ever did, Barney Frank. Get out of the House of Representatives already. You are such a problem. You've been a problem for a decade. Let me tell you what Barney Frank did. While he is in there polluting the House of Representatives with a claptrap and whatnot and all the other BS that's coming out of his mouth, what he did was he was the architect in the House with his buddy Chris Dodd, the Democratic senator out of Connecticut. The Frank Dodd plan, what this is, was real simple. Let's say you're a bank. You have a bank, and someone comes up and says, I want to borrow $100,000 for a house. Okay, you have a job? I got a job. I make good money. Here's the down payment. I go, okay, you sign the note. Thank you very much. You get a house. And the bank loans you the money. Everybody's cool. Barney Frank was so caring, so compassionate. Barney Frank is the guy with Chris Dodd of the Senate co-sponsored legislation. And I mentioned who was in charge when all these things happened. I don't know, Bill Clinton run around, Harry Reid run around, Nancy Pelosi run around, all that ilk. You remember these times. And then Barack Obama showed up and it got even worse. Here's some ideas for you. How about if the banks have to loan money, but people can't pay it back? No, we're going to make the banks loan money. We've got the power of the FDIC. We got the power of the SEC. We got the power of the federal government and the Treasury Department and the Commerce Department and banking regulations. You must loan money to everyone. The bankers sitting here going, they can't pay it back. And if you make us loan money to people who have no ability, no desire, and no compulsion to ever repay the money, the housing market will collapse and you will see a recession/depression that will bury the economy of this country. And Barney Frank Chris Dodd said, you will do this and be compassionate. If not, you're the upper 1%. You right-wing Attila Hunt killer, evil, death, baby, mutant, scum, bankers. And so the banks were compelled by Barney Frank and Chris Dodd, to loan money to people to buy homes, even though they couldn't pay the money back. It was never going to happen. So remember the example I just gave you? Guy walks into the bank, I want a house for $100,000. Here's the note. Thank you very much. And eventually he would pay it back because he has a job. Guy walks into the house, into the bank. I want to buy a house too. Okay. How much the house? $100,000. How much money you make? Oh, I don't make any money. You unemployed? Yeah. Do you have any finance? Nope. I'm broke. But you got to give me a house loan because Barney Frank and Chris Dodd said you had to. And this is passed by the Democratic Congress. This is what must be done. And the banks had a figurative gun pointed at their collective head. It's like, you will do this or we will yank you out. No bank for you. You're all gone. So the banks loaned the money. Guess what happened? It's pretty obvious, isn't it? The banks were saying, you got these houses, guys. We're not getting any payments. Foreclosures skyrocket. The housing bubble collapsed. And you got Barney Frank all sanctimonious saying, that's because of the 1% upper right-wing Attila the Hun, baby shield clubbing, Nazi Tea Party people. It's not my fault. Barney Frank, it's entirely your fault. This is on you. This is on Chris Dodd. Newt Gingrich came out and said that Barney Frank, Chris Dodd, and everybody else who supported this ought to be hauled away on charges. Newt is right. The reason I point this out is I'm trying to explain what it's like to have one person that is incredibly wrong in any position of power, as Barney Frank, who's been in the House of Representatives for the past 32 years. Local analogy, Sanford Bishop, same principle. Thankfully, he doesn't have the amount of power that Barney Frank does. He has the exact same mindset, the same lockstep. You will do this for everyone or we're going to put you out of business. Remember how you can point to Barney Frank and say, you are these guy. You're the guy who did this. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Barney Frank. You doubt any of this, please go to Google and look it up, because that's exactly what happened. The entire collapse can be traced back to the policies of Congress, and the policies emanate from the office of Barney Frank and Christopher Dodd in the Senate. The local analogy of Sanford Bishop rings true, because remember, no budget. Where's the budget? Where's the spending controls? How are we reining in the debt and the deficit? Here's what's happening. And I will never forgive Sanford Bishop for this, and neither should you. Sanford Bishop was the guy, the person. Couple 100 million people in the United States. Sanford Bishop was the guy when they said, hey, a year ago in August, we're going to have a vote on a budget. Now, remember, President Barack Obama had already submitted his budget to Congress. It failed. I believe the vote was 96-0. He had no support. That was Obama's crack at the budget. No one, not even the Democrats, would support it in the Senate. Harry Reid couldn't even back it. So that's a problem. Okay, Congress, you guys work on it. That's your job anyway. Work on the budget. It's pretty much the only job Congress needs to do is the budget. Do the budget. Everything else falls into place. It came down to a razor-thin margin. Would we have Congress cast the correct, or actually do the right thing and discuss the budget, or would they scurry home and work for re-election? Would they work for themselves to be re-elected, go back to federal trough, or would they do the right thing by their constituents and stay an extra week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month and work on the budget, which is the only damn thing they ought to be doing? Guess what happened? It came down to the vote. I want to say it was, I think it was 214, 213, or 215, 240. It's one vote margin. It's a one, I don't remember the exact number, but it was a one vote margin in the 200 and teens. That means if one person had flipped their vote the other way, they would have worked on a budget. If one person had manned up, and again, this was back when the Democrats controlled and owned the House of Representatives. If one Democrat would have flipped the other way, we wouldn't be talking about the Gang of Six right now. We wouldn't have talked about the super duper committee failure last week. We'd still have some economic problems, but not at the scale and scope we currently got. That one person was Sanford Bishop of Southwest Georgia. He was in it for himself. You know, Sanford, you can stay here. It got so bad that CNN, I remember that, Chad, you remember this, because Chad found the stories. It was beautiful. CNN had an entire 5-minute segment, funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. Where's Sanford Bishop? They couldn't find him. They go to Washington, D.C., and Washington, D.C. is off as like, he's in Albany. They go to Albany. CNN sent somebody to Albany. He's not here. He's in D.C. They go up to the D.C. office. They camp out in the D.C. office. Security hauls them away. You can't sit here. Like, we're trying to find Sanford Bishop. He was on the fence. Supposedly, this is what he told everybody. Chad Whittle called up his... Do you have this, Chad? Do we have time to play this?
Remember, we brought you the story of a Democratic congressman.
We don't have to... Okay, how long does this last? But the whole thing, what you heard him say right there, Democratic member Sanford Bishop of Congress. No one could find the guy. Then Sanford Bishop voted no. There was no budget. There wasn't even a budget debate. Sanford Bishop had to run back home and beg the people of Albany, Georgia, to reelect him. Do you see what happens? We got one person mucking up the work for everybody else. Sanford Bishop, a lot of the budget stuff, if you want to sit here and bemoan the Gang of Six, get angry about the super committee, talk about gridlock in Congress, go back to Sanford Bishop's one vote. Had he manned up, we wouldn't have the nightmare that we're facing right now. The analogy on the national scale, also in the House of Representatives, of course, Barney Frank. Get out. Good riddance. Goodbye. I don't want to hear this claptrap about, they're redistricting, and he was still going to win. The thing is, his party is due for a shellacking. The tsunami that is Tea Party Part 2 comes next November, when the deadwood is going to be cleared out. Barney Frank would have been reelected. But control of the House will be so firmly in Republican hands, he would have effectively been silenced, and his failed policies would have been overturned. He did not want a front row seat for that. That's why Barney Frank has run for the hills. Quick timeout right now. It's pushing 6:51. A little bit long in this segment. We'll make it up to you. Back with more. This is WVGA.